but I got to keep it going because I realized that Baker Mayfield is the most undervalued player in the NFL. Now, y'all track with me and fix your face real quick because value is always predicated upon your location. You see, $1 million in my hometown of Dallas, Texas, it would get you an estate. $1 million where I currently reside in Beverly Hills, it'll get you a fixer-upper. But how about $1 million of the currency in my home country of Nigeria? See, that's $1 million naira. It wouldn't even pay for half of a mortgage where I currently live, because value is always predicated upon location. So if we really want to talk about Baker Mayfield's value, then we better thoroughly understand the location in which he's playing. Remember when he showed up to Cleveland? The coach, prior to his arrival, was 1-31 in his previous 32 starts. Remember when he showed up to Cleveland after that coach, Hugh Jackson, got fired? Baker Mayfield was coached by a man who hadn't even been an offensive coordinator for more than 8 games in his career in Freddie Kitchens. Remember when Baker Mayfield got to Cleveland, the predecessors that came before him. We can look at the 4 first-round draft picks in Cleveland prior to Baker's arrival. You got 4 first-round quarterbacks. How'd they fare? Tim Couch, number 1 overall pick, 22-37. Ugh. Brady Quinn, 3-9. Ugh. Brandon Whedon, 5-15. Johnny Manziel, 2-6. And then lastly, the Browns hadn't even sniffed the playoffs since 2002. But Baker Mayfield not only takes them to a playoff game, but wins one as well. If you really want to understand someone's value, if you really want to understand this man's value, then you better properly understand the context of what he's doing in the location, which is the Cleveland Browns. That's my 2 cents on Baker Mayfield and how little he has been valued. I got to bring in NFL analyst Bucky Brooks to ask you, Bucky, is Baker Mayfield undervalued in Cleveland?
I cannot believe we're even using the term undervalued. Like, I'm trying to figure out what exactly are we trying to say that he is doing that makes him undervalued and maybe even underappreciated. Because when I look at Baker Mayfield, here's what I see. I see a guy who has a 23-22 record, which is right at 500, which is average. I'm seeing a guy who's completing 61% of his passes, which is average. His passer rating is right in the mid 89, 90 range. What exactly are we talking about? He is an average quarterback doing average things. And so how can we say he's undervalued? He actually is probably maybe a little overrated in terms of what we may be having to pay him in the coming months based on an extension. So is he undervalued? Absolutely not. He's an average quarterback paying for a team that has been a little better than average. So he's right at about the right spot for where I rate him and where he should be compensated if we're thinking about long-term values and compensation.
Okay, Bucky Brooks, that's not a surprising take from you at all. But I got to bring in my brother Sam Acho to ask you the same question. Is Baker Mayfield undervalued in Cleveland?
No, he's not. And Emmanuel, I love your monologue. I also love all of your opening monologues. It's been cool to see you do it live and in the flesh. I respect it. I appreciate it. But you got me on this show, so I got to talk to you some real. Value is not based on location. Value is based on perception. And so if there's a perceived value, you say, okay, well, I would pay X amount for this watch. I think it's worth $500,000. I'll pay $500,000 because it's a Rolex or whatever, right? But there's a perception, but then there's reality. The perception in Cleveland is that Baker is the guy. Let's not forget, Cleveland turned down trade offers from Green Bay. They said, we want Baker. So Andrew Berry said, Baker is our guy. Kevin Stefanski said, Baker is our guy. Cleveland Nation, the dog pound, go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go anywhere. They're like, man, get off of us. We have our guy. And so value is not based on location. Value is based on perception. And the perception of Baker in Cleveland is that he is the guy and he's not going anywhere.
Well, then we're almost saying the same thing using different words. When I think about Baker Mayfield, this is what people don't understand. You should understand it better than anybody I talk to because of our similar upbringings. We went to a prestigious private school, for those that don't know, St. Mark's School of Texas, literally the #1 school in Dallas, Texas. Google it. You can fact check me. And with that being said, I wasn't really all that smart in high school. Had a 2.8 my freshman year, a 3.0 my sophomore year, a 3.2 my junior year, a 3.4 my senior year. It comes out to about a 3.1 or a 3.2. I wasn't all that smart. But then I got to college. All of a sudden, I was a genius. Because in that environment amongst other geniuses, you aren't valued educationally as much because of where the bar is. Now, had I been somewhere else, I would have actually properly been able to perceive my intelligence perspective to what has come prior to me. It's the same thing with Baker Mayfield. It's the same thing I'm trying to tell you. It's the same thing, Bucky, I'm trying to tell you. You all have to put in the proper context of who Baker Mayfield is. You'll never hear me say that Baker Mayfield is a franchise quarterback. You'll only hear me say that Baker Mayfield is the franchise quarterback, because Baker Mayfield is the franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback. I don't know how he would do in Kansas City. I don't know how he would do in Tampa, in Dallas, in San Diego, or in Los Angeles, excuse me. But I know this Bucky Brooks because I walked the halls of 76 Lou Groza Boulevard, Berea, Ohio, 44017 area code. I know it, Bucky Brooks, because I walked the halls. It's hard to win in Cleveland, big dog. And so y'all have to use the proper context when assessing Baker Mayfield and Baker Mayfield's value. You all are trying to compare Baker Mayfield to Patrick Mahomes, who walked into a Kansas City Chiefs locker room that was already 12-4. Congratulations. You took them 12-4, and then you took them to the Super Bowl. They was 12-4 before you got there. Y'all are trying to assess Baker Mayfield in comparison to how you might look at a Matthew Stafford this year. Congratulations. The Rams went to the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years and went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. So Matthew Stafford, I hope you take them back to the playoffs. Look at Baker Mayfield in regards to history. He showed up 1-31 head coach. He showed up a head coach who had only been an OC for 8 games. And just like that, Baker takes him to the playoffs and wins a playoff game for the first time since 1994. You all please properly understand the context of Baker Mayfield's greatness.
Okay, since you're a great Texan, I'm going to try and give you context. So my context in Baker Mayfield is he's the number 1 overall pick. And so if we were doing this on fast food chains, when you're the number 1 overall pick, I expect you to be one of the best. So I would expect him to be McDonald's. But you being from Texas, he's Whataburger. So he's Whataburger. So locally, he's a big deal for you. But on a national scope, I don't really understand what the fascination is about Whataburger when I've had McDonald's. It is very, I guess, comparable to being a Californian talking about In-N-Out. The regional flavor, you love it, but on a national scope, it doesn't really register the same as a McDonald's would. And so maybe it's my fault for saying that Baker Mayfield came in the league the number 1 overall pick. He's supposed to be a national brand. I want him to be a franchise quarterback. So I want him to be McDonald's, but Acho, you're settling for Whataburger because locally that's a big deal, but we want more. I want more.
I hear you, Bucky Brooks. I see my dog's well-traveled. He brought up Whataburger, brought up In-N-Out. I see you, Bucky Brooks. But let me remind you all both of this. Tim Couch couldn't pull the Cleveland Browns up. Tim Couch, number 1 overall pick. Brandon Weeden was a dude at Oklahoma State. And Brandon Weeden came into the league at 28. So it wasn't like a lack of maturation. He couldn't pull the Browns up. I didn't even mention my guy, man who I was an usher in his wedding, Colt McCoy, 2-time Heisman finalist. He couldn't pull the Browns up. Johnny Manziel, he had backings from Drake and LeBron James. He couldn't pull the Browns up. Oh, who else I didn't mention, Bucky? Robert Griffin. You know, the Heisman winner, Robert Griffin, went to Cleveland in his physical prime at the age of 27. Cleveland dismantled Robert Griffin so much so that he had to retire the next year. Robert Griffin didn't play in the 2017 season, for those of y'all that are trying to figure it out. So imagine what Cleveland Brown does to quarterbacks. They do quarterbacks dirty, but Baker Mayfield steps into Cleveland, takes them to the playoffs, wins 11 games, first-year head coach. I'm just saying, Bucky, maybe he's Whataburger, maybe he's In-N-Out, but get this, when people come into Texas, they don't ask for McDonald's. They say, hey, big dog, where the nearest Whataburger? When people go to Cali, they don't ask for McDonald's. They say, hey, big dog, can you take me to an In-N-Out? You got to understand, Cleveland, they just asking for Baker Mayfield.
That's such a low bar that we're using. But let's do it this way, because I think yesterday you gave me a lecture or tutorial on inverse relationships, where the more something goes up, others go down. So I noticed when I look at Baker Mayfield, because we're saying last year was a great year for the Cleveland Browns, and it was. They were 11-5. But I also noticed he averaged 30 pass attempts per game because he's supported by the number 3 ranked rush offense in football. I also noticed that we judge our quarterbacks and their ability in the fourth quarter to really make it happen. I noticed in Baker Mayfield's career, he only has 7 game-winning drives. Only 2 of those occurred last year. So what I know from Baker Mayfield is he's a front runner. If we give him the lead, he can hold on. But he ain't bringing us back in a track meet. He can't be the anchor leg that gets it behind, because whatever you give it to him, that's where he stands. So if you want a guy that can just kind of drive the boat but not give you anything more, that's Baker Mayfield. But if you want a luxurious automobile, a luxurious vehicle that you can get in, someone that can take you to higher heights, Baker Mayfield can't do. He can't give that. So my value is wanting something that can give me more, not something that just gives me what I always have. I want more for Cleveland.
Bucky,
that's all. I just want more.
Bucky, you legitimately confuse me. You really do. Because you talk about, no, really, check me out. Because you talk about luxurious cars and luxurious automobiles, and I feel that and I respect that. And I'm with that. I'm like, let me get a nice little car, nice little watch, nice little suit. Then you talk about McDonald's. Like, it's apples and oranges. I don't see what you're talking about. I actually would agree with Emmanuel, but I think, Emmanuel, you're proving my point that Baker actually is undervalued. Or a better way to say it is this. The value that people place on him is high. It's very, very high. And so people in the Cleveland organization, from management up and from players, everyone is high on Baker. And so we're having a conversation about, well, you don't care. And, you were in Cleveland, Emmanuel. You know the importance of winning in Cleveland. You know the fan base. You understand it. People love Baker Mayfield. And so I don't think there's a conversation of he should be viewed in more importance. We love him. Everybody loves him. Everybody's high.
Not Bucky.
You're high on him. Everybody in Cleveland's high on him. And a lot of people in media are high on him. And also Andrew Berry, the people who sign his checks, the ones that cash in August and September, they're high on him as well. So Baker Mayfield's value is perfectly where it needs to be.
Until Bucky Brooks puts some respect on Baker Mayfield's name, I have to continue to fight for Baker. Now, Bucky, I'm going to drop you this full screen just to put some things in context, try to open up your eyes. You do realize that from week 12 on, Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes' stats are eerily similar. Both played 8 games, both threw 15 touchdown passes, but Baker threw 4 less interceptions. Both combined for the same passing and rushing touchdowns in 6. Baker Mayfield actually had 16. Baker Mayfield actually had a higher passer rating. So, Bucky, regardless of how you look at it, whether Baker is being pulled by the Cleveland Browns or helping pull the Cleveland Browns, I think that with Baker Mayfield, the Browns are good enough to compete with the best in the AFC, because the Chiefs are the best in the AFC, and they were 5 points away from beating the Chiefs and really 1/4 down away from contending and taking that game into potentially overtime or going out and winning it. Bucky, do you think that regardless of if Baker Mayfield is pulling or being pulled, with him at quarterback, they're good enough to contend with the best in the AFC?
The Browns are good enough to contend, but the game always has to be played a certain way. It has to be governed by their running game and their defense. So when I look at this running game, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, they're able to get it done. Best offensive line in football. They move people off the ball. When they're able to play from in front because they're dictating the terms with the running game, they're absolutely nearly unbeatable. When I think about this defense and the additions that they brought over, ton of DBs, Jadeveon Clowney coming over to help them out. Look, the defense is good enough. The only thing that can hold them back is Baker Mayfield. And the reason why the game-winning drives and the fourth quarter comebacks are so important is because money time happens in the fourth quarter. The team can get you to the fourth quarter, but your quarterback has to be able to win it. And so I think it's very convenient that you brought up the stat with Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield and bringing up that short sample size where Baker Mayfield may have statistically outplayed Patrick Mahomes. But you know in your right mind that Baker Mayfield is not in the same category as Patrick Mahomes. In fact, Baker Mayfield couldn't beat Chad Henne for the right to go and advance to the championship game. So what is it that we're really talking about? Cleveland Browns can do it. But once again, Baker Mayfield is not one of those elite guys, so I can't put him in that category. He is the X factor in determining whether the Browns are actually good enough to beat those teams in a one-and-done scenario in the postseason.
Now, obviously, in my right mind, Baker Mayfield cannot contend with Patrick Mahomes, so I'm going to stay in my wrong mind for the next 5 minutes. Sam, when I think about Baker Mayfield in context of what Bucky says, I remember against the Bengals, he had a 5-touchdown game. I remember against the Titans, he had a 4-touchdown game. I remember against the Steelers, he had a 4-touchdown game. So when Baker has to, Baker Mayfield can. At least when we saw him in the playoffs, Baker Mayfield did. Now, against the Chiefs, he did come up short. Shout out Andy Reid. Shout out Chad Henne bailing out Patrick Mahomes during the course of that injury. But what say you? Are the Browns good enough to compete with the best in the AFC with Baker Mayfield under center?
They are. And really, it's not even about being good enough to compete. The Browns are among the best. They actually are. If you talk about the best in the AFC, you talk about the Chiefs. You talk about the Bills. You talk about teams like the Titans. And you also add in the Browns. They are among the best teams in the AFC. The question, when I go back to talking about Baker specifically, I go back to levels. I go back to standards. So if you think about, like, what makes a quarterback elite, because Bucky was talking about Baker's kind of the guy holding him back. I wouldn't go that far, but there's standards. There's levels. You talk about the guys like Patrick Mahomes, in your right mind, he's elite. Guys like Tom Brady, elite. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, these guys have Super Bowls to their names. They're elite. Then you go to a second tier of player, quarterback, Ryan Tannehill's, the Carson Wentz, guys who are trying to prove themselves a little bit. And I would add Baker to that argument. But it's a team game. It's not an individual game. It's not a quarterback versus the defense. It's 11 on 11. And so if you look at the 11 that Cleveland is building, they had a top 3 rushing attack last year, number 1. They added a great defensive players in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, we talked about him the other day, and also Greg Newsome and Jadeveon Clowney and some great DBs from L.A. They're building a good defense out there in Cleveland. And so I think about the teams respectively, they are among the best in the AFC, and Baker's on his way to that next tier of being a great and elite quarterback.
When I think about the quarterbacks in the last decade who have won Super Bowls, not the future Hall of Fame, Tom Brady's or Peyton Manning's, I think about guys, Bucky Brooks and Sam Acho, who were good but had elite moments. I think about Nick Foles, good, but had an elite run. I think about Joe Flacco, good, but had an elite run. Even Eli Manning, he had a couple of elite runs. All we need to see from Baker Mayfield is an elite run, and I foresee we'll see that this year.